Four-dimensional universe. The fracture of the three-dimensional volume occurs at the moment when in human consciousness time begins to form a single whole together with three-dimensional space. Four-dimensional space-time emerges. In physics, four-dimensionality is associated with Einstein's theory of relativity. In myth, the birth of the four-dimensional universe is associated with a few names in human history such as Buddha, Christ, Zoroaster. In its fullest form, the four-dimensional myth is represented in the gospel story of the coming of Christ. In particular, Meletinsky writes about this event as mythological in its inner meaning and at the same time uniquely historical. The events described in the Gospels have the character of initial and purely sacred events and fully preserve the basic structure of the myth. Four-dimensionality is revealed to the observer at near-light speeds, when time intervals approach zero and spatial intervals approach infinity. Experimental studies show that human perception of the environment can be a perception of not only Euclidean but also Riemannian space. The usual ideas about the existence of some visual space like Newtonian physical space are nothing more than ingrained prejudices of ordinary consciousness. If by force of our imagination we imagine ourselves an elementary particle flying at near-light speed, then in the limit we will feel ourselves both a point and a volumetric ball of infinite radius at the same time. According to quantum wave dualism, we will represent already familiar to us mandala, eternally staying in its own center and simultaneously enclosing all objects of the surrounding world. We will become similar to the zero-dimensional universe, but with the big difference that there the mandala carried the whole universe teeming with countless living creatures without singling out man as an individual personality. And here, in four-dimensionality, the consciousness of one person represents the whole universe. Kepler spoke of such a worldview in his book Harmonies of the World. The natural human soul is no more than one single point, and in it the image and character of all heavens will be imprinted in potency, even if they were 100 times bigger. Thus, man resembles the God of the three-dimensional universe, repeating the man-godly way of Christ, or, in terms of another tradition, the state of nirvana. In such a case, if every human being, through his own difficult inexplicable path, can become God, then the end of monotheism comes. It is not surprising that the monotheists sensed in Christ's sermons a great confusion, overturning their three-dimensional model of the universe. The three-dimensional Newtonian frame of reference, which was previously unified for all, and together with it, the ethical law, which is unified for all, no longer work in four dimensions. Man goes beyond three dimensions. He is already alone with his own frame of reference, his own space, his own time and his own individual measure of good and evil. Isn't it too much freedom for man? We will question, following Ivan Karamazov. Will it not turn into an explosion of unrestrained willfulness? In four-dimensionality a different ethics operates. Since we have become a volumetric ball of infinite radius, all living beings surrounding us besides being independent creatures, are at the same time our innards. Consequently, not harming others is, first of all, not harming ourselves. Love your neighbor as yourself becomes a completely natural quality of four-dimensional life, instead of the previous ethical law based on the fear of inevitable punishment. At the same time, living not under the law but under grace does not negate the fulfillment of the law. A four-dimensional person is automatically a law-abiding person, because he does not allow disrespectful actions to his neighbor and the very intent of these actions. In four-dimensionality the responsibility for one's deeds increases many times, as the intent to act is practically equal to the action itself. In the world of near-light speeds, high energies and vanishingly small particles, thought is clearly material. The supreme ethical value of this universe is love as the basis of life for each and every one. In the one word of love are contained the law and the prophets. Man, who opens himself in love for himself and his neighbor, is the basis and center of the four-dimensional universe. However, in spite of the fact that the gospel stories and similar insights of the human spirit are many years old, the issues of four-dimensional ethics are still difficult for our actual experience. In all probability, the full mastering of the four-dimensional mythological space by man, when the four-dimensional worldview will become dominant not only in the life of an individual, but also in the life of society as a whole, is still ahead of us. The highest manifestations of four-dimensionality in the life of society that can be observed now are the famous American Bill of Human Rights and all international documents on human rights. They declare the central, supreme place of man in the system of ethical values of modern society. Unfortunately, the matter does not always go beyond declarations. Slogans of rights and freedoms often become a bargaining chip for political games, double standards, and become hostages of three-dimensional national interests. Although it is not bad that these slogans have appeared at all, even if not yet in the role they deserve. As an elementary particle flying at near light speed, we, in terms of the theory of relativity, become a world point. The trajectory of our flight in 4 dimensions will then be called the world line. Each person has a world line, but not everyone realizes it because it is 4-dimensional. The extent of the world line goes far beyond any one earthly incarnation of individual consciousness. The sequence of earthly incarnations of an individual consciousness is located on its world line as knots, as milestones that influence positively or negatively the further trajectory, changing the very quality of the trajectory. Vengeance is mine and I will repay. This is the 4-dimensional mythological consciousness. Such consciousness is the result of a great inner work on oneself of a person of 3-dimensional consciousness. Entering the period of his 4-dimensionality, a man passes through a difficult strip of social loneliness, gains self-sufficiency, learns to understand the labyrinths of his own psychology, throws off false social beliefs, and finally experiences his own spiritual death. Then, in the silence of his heart, the person is inevitably resurrected in a new, silent quality that descends upon him from the depths of the 4-dimensional universe. Next time we will talk about possible future dimensions of mythological consciousness.